The massive dome of the Galactic Council chamber stretched high above the gathered delegates. 847 different alien species sat in their designated sections, their strange forms creating a sea of colors and shapes that hurt human eyes to look at for too long. At the center of it all, Ambassador Jack Morrison sat with his small human delegation, trying to keep his face calm as the votes kept coming in. The holographic display above the chamber floor showed the running tally in bright blue numbers. Each time a new vote registered, Jack felt his stomach drop a little more. The humans were losing badly. Very badly. The delegation from Zerion Prime votes yes for banishment, announced the mechanical voice of the Council's computer system. The number jumped from 598 to 603. Jack's aide, Linda Walsh, leaned over and whispered, "Sir, we need to prepare for the worst. The moderate factions aren't supporting us like they promised." Jack nodded but kept staring at the display. He had spent 15 years as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Federation. 15 years of careful diplomacy, trade negotiations, and cultural exchanges. All of it was about to be thrown away because humanity couldn't play nice with the other children. In the galaxy, the truth was humans were different. Every other species in the Federation had evolved as prey animals or peaceful herbivores. They formed governments through consensus and solved disputes through lengthy discussions. Humans had clawed their way to the top of Earth's food chain by being aggressive, competitive, and stubborn. These traits served them well in space exploration and colonial development, but they made terrible neighbors in a peaceful galactic community. The delegation from Altair 7 votes yes for banishment, the computer announced. 610 votes now. High Counselor Vex Thera, the tall and elegant leader of the Zolonian species, rose from her crystal platform. Her forearms spread wide in what humans had learned was a gesture of authority among her people. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the chamber's translation system. "Honored delegates, we approach the final votes on Resolution 2391. This decision weighs heavily on all our hearts, but we must consider the safety and peace of our Federation above all else." She paused and looked directly at Jack. Her large, dark eyes showed no emotion, but Jack could see the satisfaction behind them. Vexathera had been pushing for humanity's removal from the Federation for over 3 years. Humanity has shown time and again that they cannot control their aggressive nature. The Kepler mining disputes resulted in 14 dead and 47 injured beings from 6 different species. The violations of our non-interference doctrine on 17 primitive worlds have damaged our reputation across this entire sector of space. And most concerning of all, they have militarized every single one of their outer colonies despite signing the peace accords in 2387. More votes came in. 623 now. Jack realized they had lost. The Federation required a simple majority to pass resolutions, and there were only 847 total delegates. Even if every remaining vote went to humanity, they couldn't win. "The delegation from Earth wishes to address the Council," Jack said, standing up slowly. His voice carried clearly through his translator device. Vexathara's expression showed annoyance, but she couldn't deny him the right to speak. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Morrison of Earth." Jack walked to the center of the chamber. All around him, hundreds of alien faces turned to watch. Some looked sad, others curious, but many showed the same satisfaction he had seen in Vexathara's eyes. "Honored delegates, I won't waste your time arguing against charges we both know are true. Humans are aggressive. We do solve problems with force when other methods fail. We have militarized our colonies because we've learned that the galaxy is not always a safe place." He turned slowly to address different sections of the chamber. "But I want you to remember something. When the bloody Nebula pirates threatened the Centauri trade routes, who stopped them? When the Crystal Plague broke out on New Harmony, who volunteered their medical teams for the most dangerous rescue missions? When the Dark Fleet attacked the Outer Rim colonies 3 years ago, who stood and fought while others ran?" Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jack pressed on. "You're right that we're different. We don't solve everything with committee meetings and consensus votes. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we break things, but we also get results when talking fails." The final votes were coming in now. Jack could see the display climbing toward the number that would seal humanity's fate. I want you to think carefully about what you're doing today. You're not just banishing one troublesome species. You're removing the only people in this federation who are willing to do the hard jobs, the dangerous jobs, the jobs that require someone to stand up and fight when fighting is the only option left. 641 votes, the computer announced. It was. Overvexathera stood again. The resolution passes. By a vote of 641 to 206, the Galactic Federation hereby banishes the species known as humanity from Federation space. All trade agreements are void immediately. All human personnel must evacuate Federation territory within 1 standard year. This session is concluded. The chamber erupted in a mixture of relieved chatter and uncomfortable silence. Jack gathered, his papers slowly ignoring the stares from around the room. Linda Walsh approached him with tears in her eyes. "Sir, what do we do now?" Jack looked up at the display showing the vote count one more time. Then he smiled, and Linda was surprised to see that it wasn't a sad smile. "We go home, Linda. We tell President Williams what happened here today. And then we show these people what humanity can do when we're not trying to play by someone else's rules." Back on Earth, President Kate Williams received the transmission in the Oval Office 6 hours later. She sat behind her desk, watching Jack's recorded message with the expression that her staff couldn't read. When the message ended, she was quiet for a long moment. "Madam President," asked her Chief of Staff, Ben Parker, "what are your orders?" Kate Williams had been expecting this day for years. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a sealed folder marked with red letters. "Project Exodus, eyes only. Get me General Harrison at the Pentagon. Tell him." The vote went as expected. It's time to activate the contingency plan. She looked out the window at the lights of Washington, D.C., then at the stars just becoming visible in the evening sky. "They wanted us gone," she said quietly. "Let's not keep them waiting." 3 days after the vote, Dr. Lisa Brown stood in the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching ice crystals drift past the reinforced windows. The station hung in the darkness of the Oort cloud, far beyond Pluto, where no alien ship had ever thought to look. For 12 years, this had been humanity's most carefully guarded secret. Lisa pressed her hand against the cold glass and smiled. Today was the day she would prove that human intuition could beat alien mathematics. "Dr. Brown, the test chamber is ready," called her assistant, Mike Johnson, from across the lab. Mike was young, barely 30, but he understood her theories, better than scientists twice his age. Lisa walked over to the massive machine that filled most of the lab space. It looked nothing like the elegant jump gate technology the aliens used. Where alien devices were smooth and graceful, this machine was all sharp angles and heavy metal. It hummed with barely contained energy that made the air itself feel thick. "Are you sure about this?" Mike asked, checking the readings on his tablet. "The power levels are way beyond anything we've tested before." "Mike, we've been playing it safe for too long," Lisa said, entering commands into the control panel. "The Federation thinks faster than light travel is impossible without their jump gates. They're wrong. They're wrong because they think like prey animals, always looking for the safest path." She pulled up the holographic display showing her calculations. The math looked crazy to anyone trained in Federation science. Where alien equations were neat and orderly, Lisa's work was full of shortcuts and leaps of logic that only made sense to human minds. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a section covered in red numbers. "The aliens calculate every possible outcome before they act. They map every star, every gravity well, every particle of space dust. They think you need perfect information to fold space safely." Mike nodded, though he still looked nervous. "And you think they're overcomplicating it?" "I know they are. Humans have been making impossible jumps for thousands of years. We sailed across oceans without knowing what was on the other side. We flew to the moon when our computers were less powerful than a modern calculator. We don't need perfect information. We need courage and good instincts." Lisa activated the machine. The test object, a small metal cube, sat on a platform at one end of the chamber. According to her calculations, it should appear on the platform at the other end, having traveled through folded space faster than light could cross the same distance. The machine's hum grew louder. Energy readings spiked across all the monitors. Then, with a sound like reality tearing, the cube vanished. For a moment, nothing happened. Mike held his breath. Lisa watched the empty platform with calm confidence. Then the cube appeared on the far platform, exactly where it was supposed to be. "It worked," Mike whispered. "Lisa, it actually worked." Lisa was already at the computer checking the readings. Transit time was 0.3 seconds. The cube traveled 800 meters through folded space while light would have taken nearly 3 microseconds to cover the same distance normally. "We just proved that human-designed faster than light travel is possible." Meanwhile, on Mars, Commander Steve Rogers stood on the observation deck of Olympus shipyards, watching the final hull plates being welded onto humanity's largest ship ever built. The New Horizon stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull black as space and bristling with weapon systems that would make Federation peacekeepers faint. "She's beautiful," said Chief Engineer Carol Davis, joining Steve at the window. Carol had designed most of the ship's systems, working from specifications that the Federation would have considered pure madness. "She's built for war," Steve replied. "The aliens designed their ships like floating palaces, all curves and grace and comfort. We built ours like a fortress that happens to fly." Carol laughed. "The Federation thinks our ship designs are crude and ugly. They don't understand that we're not trying to win design awards. We're trying to survive whatever's waiting for us out there." The New Horizon was just the flagship. Around it, dozens of smaller vessels were taking shape in the construction bays. Colony ships designed to carry entire cities. Cargo haulers built to strip mine asteroids. Science vessels equipped for long-range exploration. And warships, lots of warships, because humans had learned that space was not a friendly place. "How many people know what we're really building here?" Steve asked. "Maybe 50 across all the projects," Carol said. "President Williams has kept this tighter than nuclear secrets. Even most of the workers think they're building ships for deep space exploration." Steve nodded. The cover story was that humanity was preparing for a major expansion into unexplored systems. It wasn't exactly a lie. They were planning to explore new systems. They just weren't planning to ask the Federation's permission first. On Titan, Administrator Amy Foster was dealing with a different kind of preparation. Her job was coordinating the logistics of moving 12 billion people and all their equipment out of Federation space without causing a panic. "The mining operations are ahead of schedule," reported her deputy, Paul Mitchell. "We've extracted 40% more rare metals this quarter than the Federation thinks we're capable of producing." Amy studied the numbers on her screen. To outside observers, it looked like human colonies were working frantically to meet increased quotas before some undefined deadline. The truth was that they were stripping every useful resource they could get their hands on. "What about the agricultural worlds?" she asked. "Seed banks are complete. We've preserved samples of every food crop and livestock breed from all our colonies. If we have to start over on virgin worlds, we won't starve." Amy nodded. "And the civilian population? Still don't know what's coming. We've been running emergency preparedness drills for years, telling people it's for asteroid strikes or solar flares. When we give the evacuation order, they'll be ready to move quickly." She looked out the window at Titan's orange sky, thinking about all the human worlds that would soon be abandoned. It was heartbreaking, but it was also liberating. For the first time since first contact, humanity would be free to be itself. Back on New Geneva Station, Lisa was running her 15th successful test when the secure communication system chimed. President Williams's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. "Dr. Brown, I just received word that the Federation vote went as expected. How soon can you have the drive system ready for full-scale deployment?" Lisa looked at Mike, who was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. They had done it. They had really done it. "Madam President, we can have the first drives installed and tested within 6 months. Give me a year, and I can outfit every ship in the fleet with faster-than-light capability that will make Federation jump gates look like horse-drawn carriages. You have whatever you need, Doctor. Whatever resources, whatever personnel, whatever time you can squeeze out of our schedule. This technology is humanity's ticket to freedom." The screen went dark. Lisa turned back to her machine, already planning the next round of tests. The aliens thought they were banishing humanity to the outer darkness. They had no idea they were setting them free. Captain Rick Stone watched the loading operations from the bridge of the colony ship Freedom's Dawn. 6 months had passed since the Federation vote, and human colonies across the galaxy were shutting down with military precision. What looked like panic to alien observers was actually the most organized evacuation in galactic history. "Captain, the last civilian transport just docked," reported his navigation officer Janet Hill. "We're at full capacity with 15,000 colonists and their essential equipment." Rick nodded, checking the fleet status on his command screen. Around him, 47 other colony ships were making final preparations for departure. These weren't the desperate refugee vessels the Federation expected. They were purpose-built arcs designed to carry entire communities to new worlds. "Any sign of Federation monitoring?" Rick asked. "3 scout ships at the edge of the system, sir. They're keeping their distance but definitely watching us," replied Communications Officer Dan Walsh. Rick smiled grimly. The Federation wanted to make sure humanity was really leaving, but they were about to get a surprise. Instead of heading toward the galactic rim like defeated refugees, the human fleet was going somewhere the aliens didn't think existed. "All ships, this is Freedom's Dawn," Rick announced over the fleet communication channel. "Final systems check complete. Prepare for jump to coordinates Omega-7. On his tactical display, Rick could see the Federation scouts moving closer, probably trying to track where the human fleet was heading. They were about to discover that human technology had advanced far beyond what their intelligence reports suggested. "Sir, Dr. Brown's drive system is showing green across all indicators," Janet reported. "We're ready for the jump." Rick took a deep breath. This would be the first time anyone had used Lisa's folded space drive with a ship this large. The math said it would work, but human space travel had always involved a certain amount of controlled risk. "Execute jump in 3, 2, 1, mark." Reality twisted around the Freedom's Dawn. For a split second that felt like eternity, Rick experienced the strange sensation of being everywhere and nowhere at once. Then normal space returned, and the bridge displays showed their new location. "Jump. Successful, Captain," Janet announced, her voice filled with amazement. "We've covered 1,200 light-years in 4.7 seconds. The Federation scouts are nowhere to be seen." Through the main viewport, Rick could see the other colony ships materializing around them, their own jumps creating brief flashes of twisted light. In the distance, a yellow star burned brightly, surrounded by 6 planets that Federation surveys had declared uninhabitable. "Welcome to the Kepler 442 system," Rick announced to the fleet. "Our new home." Back in Federation space, the alien scouts were reporting to their commanders with growing confusion. Fleet Commander Zixtar of the Altarian Navy reviewed the sensor data with increasing alarm. "They simply vanished," reported Scout Captain Vel Nash. "One moment we were tracking 48 human vessels, the next moment our sensors showed nothing but empty space." Zixtar studied the readings on his display. "This is impossible. No ship can jump to hyperspace without using a jump gate. The energy requirements alone would tear any vessel apart. Sir, we've confirmed similar reports from 7 other human colonies. In each case, the evacuation fleets disappeared without trace. No jump gate signatures, no hyperspace trails, nothing." Zixtar felt a chill run through his scaled skin. If humans had developed independent faster-than-light travel, it changed everything. The Federation's control over galactic civilization was based on their monopoly of jump gate technology. Every species had to use Federation-controlled gates to travel between systems. "Send a priority message to High Command," Zixtar ordered. "Tell them we may have a bigger problem than we thought." On Earth, the final evacuation was proceeding under Admiral Grace Mitchell's careful supervision. Unlike the colonial evacuations, which had been kept secret from the general population, Earth's departure was happening in full view of the world. The difference was that it looked nothing like the desperate exodus the Federation expected. "Admiral, the industrial dismantling crews have finished with the orbital platforms," reported Colonel Brian Hayes. "All useful materials have been loaded for transport." Grace watched from the command center as massive cargo ships lifted away from Earth's surface carrying the dismantled pieces of entire cities. The Federation thought humans were fleeing in panic, but they were actually conducting the largest salvage operation in history. "What's the status on the deep space installations?" Grace asked. "Pluto base is 90% evacuated. The teams are finishing the data wipe and will be ready for pickup within 12 hours. All other outer system facilities have been cleared and their equipment relocated." Grace nodded. Humanity wasn't just leaving Federation space. They were taking everything of value with them. When the aliens finally worked up the courage to investigate the abandoned human worlds, they would find empty shells stripped of anything useful. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from New Geneva Station," announced Communications Chief Susan Parker. "Dr. Brown reports that the final batch of colony ships has successfully jumped to their designated coordinates." "Excellent. How many people have we successfully relocated so far?" 8.4 billion, ma'am. The remaining 3.6 billion are scheduled for evacuation over the next 90 days. Grace smiled. The Federation had given humanity 1 year to evacuate, but they would be gone in less than 6 months. More importantly, they would be gone to places the Federation couldn't follow or find. The secret was in the coordinates themselves. Lisa's breakthrough hadn't just been about faster-than-light travel. She had discovered that human intuition could detect stellar formations that alien sensors couldn't read. What the Federation's star charts showed as empty void was actually rich with habitable systems that their rigid mathematical models couldn't process. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Federation High Command," Susan reported. Grace authorized the communication. The image of High Counselor Vexus Thara appeared on the main screen. Her 4 arms folded in what humans had learned was a gesture of extreme displeasure. "Admiral Mitchell, the Federation demands to know how human vessels are traveling without using jump gates. This technology must be shared with the Galactic Council for evaluation and regulation." Grace looked at the alien's image with cold amusement. "High Counselor, I'm afraid you're mistaken. According to your own vote, humanity is no longer part of the Federation. We have no obligation to share anything with you." "This is a matter of galactic security," Vexathara insisted. "No species can be allowed to possess unregulated faster-than-light technology." "Then you should have thought of that before you voted, to banish us," Grace replied calmly. "You wanted us gone, Counselor. You're getting exactly what you asked for." She cut the transmission and turned back to her staff. "Colonel Hayes, I want the final evacuation accelerated. We leave in 90 days, not 6 months." "Yes, ma'am. Should we send a message to the colony fleets?" Grace walked to the window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were already building new lives on worlds the Federation had never imagined existed. "Send this message to all human forces," she said. "Tell them the Federation is getting nervous. That means we're doing something right. Continue the evacuation as planned, but be ready for anything. Our former friends are starting to realize they may have made a mistake." Above Earth's surface, the last of the orbital factories disappeared into the cargo holds of waiting ships. In 3 months, when the final human vessel left the solar system, they would leave behind only empty worlds and a message that would haunt the Federation for years to come. Humanity was free, and the galaxy would never be the same. 2 years had passed since humanity's departure, when Commander Tony Blake received the most important assignment of his career. Standing on the bridge of the survey ship Wanderer, he watched the readings on his tactical display with amazement. "Commander, you need to see this," called Lieutenant Ellen Davis from her station. "Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures in the void beyond the galactic rim." Tony moved to Ellen's console and studied the data. What he saw should have been impossible according to everything the Federation knew about space. The region their old star charts labeled as dead space was blazing with industrial activity. "How many installations are we detecting?" Tony asked. "At least 17 major construction sites across 12 different star systems, sir. The energy output is enormous. Some of these facilities are producing more power than entire Federation worlds." Tony smiled. 2 years ago, when the last human ships had left Federation space, many people wondered if they would survive in the galactic wilderness. The answer was sitting right there on his sensors. "Set course for the nearest facility," Tony ordered. "Let's see what our people have built." The Wanderer engaged its skip drive, the human improvement on Dr. Lisa Brown's original design, where Federation jump gates required massive installations and careful calculations. Human ships could now fold space with equipment no larger than a standard engine room. The journey that would have taken Federation vessels 3 months was completed in 18 hours. What Tony found when they arrived left him speechless. Where 2 years ago there had been empty space around a lonely red dwarf star, now there was a thriving industrial complex. Asteroid mining stations carved up entire planetoids while massive construction yards assembled ships, larger than anything humanity had ever built. "My God," whispered Ellen. "It's like they built an entire civilization from scratch." The communication system crackled to life. "Wanderer, this is New Titan Station Control. Welcome home, Commander Blake. President Williams is waiting to speak with you." 20 minutes later, Tony found himself in a conference room aboard the station, facing the woman who had led humanity through its greatest transformation. President Kate Williams looked older than when he'd last seen her, but her eyes burned, with an energy that hadn't been there during the dark days before the Exodus. "Commander Blake, I'm glad you could make it out here," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "I wanted you to see what we've accomplished before your next assignment." Through the conference room's windows, Tony could see the vast construction yards where ships took shape. These weren't the elegant vessels the Federation preferred. They were purely functional, built for long voyages and hard work in hostile environments. "Ma'am, this is incredible. How did we build all of this so quickly?" Kate smiled. "It turns out that when you remove bureaucracy and committee meetings from the construction process, things get built remarkably fast. Dr. Brown's skip drive technology means we can move materials and personnel between systems in days instead of months. Our mining operations can strip an asteroid belt in the time it used to take the Federation to survey one." She activated a holographic display showing the locations of human settlements. Tony counted dozens of colonies spread across systems he'd never heard of. The Federation spent centuries mapping space using their rigid scientific methods. Kate continued. "They only found systems that fit their mathematical models. But human intuition can detect stellar formations their sensors miss entirely. We've found habitable worlds in places they swear are impossible." Tony studied the display. "What's our population now?" 12.7 billion, and growing rapidly. Our agricultural worlds are producing food surpluses. Our industrial centers are exceeding all projections. And our research facilities are making breakthrough discoveries almost weekly." She switched the display to show comparative production figures. "Commander, we're now producing more advanced technology, rare metals, and manufactured goods than we ever did as part of the Federation. Without their regulations and trade restrictions, human innovation has exploded." Tony felt a surge of pride, but he could see something troubled in the president's expression. "Ma'am, what's my next assignment?" Kate's face grew serious. "We've been monitoring Federation communications. Things are not going well for our former friends. Without human industrial capacity, their supply chains are collapsing. The Kepler mining operation they seized is producing less than 30% of what our people achieved." She called up another display showing Federation space. Red warning indicators marked dozens of systems. Worse, pirate attacks on Federation colonies have increased by 400%. It seems our colonial defense force was more effective at maintaining galactic peace than anyone realized. Tony nodded. The Federation had always complained about human military methods, calling them crude and excessive. But those same methods had kept trade routes safe and colonies protected. "There's something else," Kate continued. 3 Federation member species have formally requested permission to open diplomatic relations with us. The Corvin Republic, the Centauri Alliance, and even some of the moderate Altarian factions are questioning the wisdom of the banishment vote. "What about the Zolonians?" Kate's expression hardened. "High Counselor Vexithera is facing a crisis of her own. Without human protection, Zolonian outer colonies have been hit hard by raiders. Their perfect consensus-based government is struggling to make the quick decisions necessary for effective defense." She stood and walked to the window. "Tony, I'm sending you and the Wanderer on a deep reconnaissance mission. I want detailed intelligence on Federation military capabilities, economic stability, and political cohesion. Something tells me we're going to need that information soon. Before Tony could ask what she meant, an alarm sounded throughout the station. Kate activated her emergency communicator. "This is President Williams. Report." "Ma'am, this is Deep Space. Monitor Station 7, came the urgent reply. "We're detecting massive unidentified contacts entering the galactic rim. Energy signatures don't match any known Federation or human vessels." Kate and Tony exchanged glances. "How many contacts?" Kate asked. "At least 200 ships, ma'am. They're moving in formation toward the inner Federation systems. Their weapon signatures are significant." Kate closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Tony could see the leader who had guided humanity through its exodus. "Commander Blake, your mission just changed. Take the Wanderer and get to Federation space as fast as your skip drive will carry you. Find out who these new players are and what they want." "Ma'am, should I make contact with Federation authorities?" Kate considered this. "Not yet. Observe and report first. But Tony, if these unknowns prove hostile to the Federation, remember something. We may have our differences with our former neighbors, but they're still the closest thing to civilization this galaxy has." Tony saluted and headed for the door. As he left, he heard Kate speaking into her communicator. "Get me Admiral Mitchell and the Defense Council. It looks like humanity's exile might be ending sooner than we planned." 6 hours later, the Wanderer jumped toward Federation space carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the lights of New Titan Station continued their work of building humanity's future among the stars. In the depths of space, 200 alien ships moved toward Federation territory, with weapons charged and intentions unknown. The HFY galaxy was about to discover that humanity's departure had left a vacuum that other, less friendly forces were eager to fill. The Federation had wanted the humans gone. Now they were about to learn what life was like without them. The war came faster than anyone expected. Within weeks of their arrival, the alien invaders had destroyed 16 Federation colonies and were pushing toward the core systems. High Counselor Vexithara stood in the emergency session of the Galactic Council, watching the tactical displays with growing horror. "The enemy ships are unlike anything in our databases," reported Fleet Admiral Quindar, his voice strained with exhaustion. "They don't respond to communication attempts. They don't take prisoners. They simply destroy everything in their path." Vexithara looked at the red markers spreading across the galactic map. Each one represented a dead world, millions of lives lost to an enemy that seemed to come from nowhere. "What do our intelligence reports tell us about their capabilities?" she asked. "They're using weapons and tactics we've never seen before. Our ships are designed for peacekeeping operations, not total warfare. When we engage them, we lose 3 vessels for every one of theirs we destroy." The council chamber erupted in panicked voices as delegates realized the Federation was facing its first existential threat in over 2 centuries. Vexithara raised her forearms for silence. "How long before they reach the inner systems?" "At their current rate of advance, they'll be at Zentara Prime within 6 months. Quindar replied grimly. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "Perhaps it's time to reconsider some recent decisions." Everyone turned to see Ambassador Jack Morrison entering the chamber. The human diplomat looked older than when they'd last seen him, but he carried himself with a confidence that hadn't been there during the banishment vote. "You have no authority here," Vexithara said coldly. "Humanity was banished from this council." Jack walked calmly to the center of the chamber. "I'm not here as a member of the Federation. I'm here as a representative of the independent human republic offering assistance to a neighbor in distress." Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. The phrase independent human republic was new to most of them. "We don't need human assistance," Vexithara declared. "Your people's aggressive nature was the reason for your banishment in the first place." Jack smiled grimly. "High Counselor, right now those aggressive tendencies might be exactly what you need. The enemy you're facing doesn't care about your peaceful intentions or your diplomatic protocols. They understand only force." Admiral Quindar stepped forward. "What are you proposing?" "A joint defense agreement. Human forces will assist in repelling the invasion. In return, The Federation will formally recognize human independence and establish proper diplomatic relations. Absolutely not, Vexthara snapped. We will not negotiate with exiles. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. A communications officer rushed to Admiral Quindar with an urgent message. Sir, the enemy has broken through our defense line at Kepler Station. They're heading directly for Zentara Prime. Estimated arrival time is 72 hours. The chamber fell silent. 72 hours meant the enemy had somehow accelerated their advance by months. Jack activated his personal communicator. This is Ambassador Morrison. Execute Operation Homecoming. Through the chamber's massive windows, impossible lights began, appearing in space around Zentara Prime. Ships materialized from folded space, dozens of them, then hundreds. But these weren't the elegant Federation vessels or the crude human ships the Council remembered. These were something entirely new. Captain, Helen Murphy stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiant, watching Zentara Prime grow larger on her main screen. Around her, the human task force deployed in formations that would have been impossible with traditional jump gate technology. All ships report ready for combat, Captain, announced her tactical officer, Lieutenant Mark Taylor. The enemy fleet is still 6 hours out. Helen studied the tactical display. The alien invaders numbered over 400 ships, far more than the 200 originally detected. They had been gathering reinforcements during their advance through Federation space. What's the status of our Federation liaison? Admiral Quindar is aboard his flagship, maintaining communication silence as requested. He's still not entirely convinced our tactics will work. Helen understood the Admiral's skepticism. Federation military doctrine emphasized defensive formations and gradual attrition. Human combat philosophy was based on aggressive offense and overwhelming firepower, applied at the enemy's weakest points. Signal the fleet. We engage the enemy as planned. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're showing the galaxy what humanity has become. The battle began 6 hours later, when the enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Federation observers watched in amazement as the human ships immediately accelerated toward the invaders, instead of forming defensive lines. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history, where Federation tactics relied on long-range, precision weapons and careful maneuvering. Human ships closed to point-blank range and engaged in brutal close-quarters combat. They used ramming attacks, boarding actions, and weapons designed to cause maximum destruction, rather than elegant defeats. Admiral Sam Turner, commanding from the heavy cruiser Liberty, watched his tactical display as human forces tore through the enemy formation. The invaders had expected to face the same cautious Federation fleets they'd been defeating for months. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that matched their own aggressive nature. Enemy flagship is breaking off, reported his communications officer. They're attempting to retreat. Negative, Sam replied. All ships, pursue and destroy. We don't let any of them escape to report back to wherever they came from. The battle ended 12 hours later with the complete destruction of the enemy fleet. Not a single invader ship escaped the system. The cost to human forces was 18 ships destroyed and 43 damaged, losses that would have been considered catastrophic by Federation standards, but were acceptable to military minds trained in total warfare. In the council chamber, Vexithara watched the aftermath with emotions she couldn't name. The humans had done in 12 hours what Federation forces had failed to accomplish in months of fighting. Jack Morrison approached her with a tablet containing the formal treaty documents. High Counselor, I believe we have some things to discuss. Vexithara looked at the human diplomat, then at the tactical displays showing the wreckage of what had been an unstoppable enemy fleet. What are your terms? Recognition of human independence, formal diplomatic relations, and a mutual defense pact. We're not asking to rejoin the Federation. We're asking to be treated as equals. And if we refuse? Jack glanced toward the windows, where human ships were already beginning rescue operations for Federation survivors. Then you'll face the next crisis alone. And there's always a next crisis. Vexithara took the tablet and began reading. Around her, other council members were doing the same with their own copies. The terms were surprisingly fair considering the circumstances. "There's one thing I don't understand," she said finally. "Why help us at all? We banished you. We treated you as outcasts." Jack's expression softened slightly. "Because underneath, all our differences were neighbors in a dangerous galaxy. Humans have learned that sometimes you need to set aside old grudges to face new threats." 3 days later, the Treaty of Zentara was signed in the same chamber where humanity had been, banished 5 years earlier. President Kate Williams signed for the independent Human Republic, while High Counselor Vexithera signed for the Galactic Federation. The galaxy had learned that banishing humanity hadn't weakened them. It had set them free to become something greater. And sometimes the neighbors you push away are exactly the ones you need when real trouble comes calling. As the signing ceremony concluded, Kate Williams looked out at the stars and smiled. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as subjects or supplicants, but as equals who had earned their respect the hard way. The Federation had voted to banish Earth. Humanity hadn't waited to be told twice. And in the end, that independence had saved them all.